The soft hum of an alarm clock fills the room as Lila Martin stirs awake in her modest yet cozy suburban home. The morning sunlight streams through the beige curtains, bathing the room in a warm glow. Everything seems ordinary, almost picturesque, but a faint unease lingers in the air. Lila, a 34-year-old freelance graphic designer, thrives in the solitude of her home. She loves the predictability of her routine and the sanctuary her house provides. She stretches, grabs her phone, and checks her emails before heading to the kitchen. Lila mutters to herself as she brews coffee. Lila, another day, another deadline. At least this one isn't due until tomorrow. The kettle whistles, and she pours herself a steaming cup. The silence of the house is comforting. She sits by the kitchen window, watching her neighbor walk their dog. Her gaze lingers, something nagging at her subconscious. She brushes it off, chalking it up to lack of sleep. The day progresses, as usual. Lila's home office is tucked in the corner of her living room, where she spends most of her time. She works diligently, pausing occasionally to sip her coffee or stretch. Around noon, she notices something odd. Her phone buzzes with a notification from a security app she barely remembers installing. She glances at it, confused by the alert. New motion detected. Lila. To herself, motion detected? I haven't left the house today. She opens the app, but the live feed shows nothing unusual. Shrugging, she dismisses the notification and returns to her work. But the incident leaves her slightly on edge. As evening falls, Lila curls up on her couch, scrolling through her favorite streaming platform. She's halfway through an episode of a thriller series when she hears a faint click. She pauses the show and listens intently. Nothing, just the creaks of an old house settling. Her fingers hover over the remote, but her mind wanders back to the earlier notification. She grabs her phone again and reopens the security app. This time, she checks the recorded clips. Most are mundane. Shadows from her curtains moving or her cat, Milo, jumping onto furniture. But one clip makes her heart skip a beat. It's her, sitting at her desk, working on her laptop. The angle is strange, almost too perfect. She glances around the room, trying to pinpoint where the footage could have been captured from. Her gaze lands on the bookshelf across from her desk. Heart pounding, Lila approaches the bookshelf. She runs her fingers along the spines of her books, then stops. One book, thicker than the others, feels off. She pulls it out and immediately notices a small, black lens embedded in its spine. Her breath catches in her throat. She stares at the hidden camera in disbelief, 1,000 thoughts racing through her mind. Who put it there? How long has it been recording? The camera is connected to a small device, almost unnoticeable among the clutter on her shelf. She yanks it out, her hands trembling. Lila, whispering, "What the hell is this?" She backs away, her mind reeling. Fear, anger, and confusion swirl inside her. The once comforting silence of her home now feels suffocating, sinister. She sets the camera down on the coffee table, staring at it as if it might explain itself. The episode ends with Lila sitting alone in her living room, the faint red light on the camera blinking mockingly at her. Lila paces the living room, her hands still trembling as she grips her phone. The hidden camera sits on the coffee table like an ominous artifact, its presence changing everything she thought she knew about her home. She dials her best friend, Clara. Clara on the phone. "Hey, what's up?" Lila, voice shaking. "Clara, I found a camera. In my house. Hidden in a book on my shelf." Clara, alarmed. "Wait, what? A camera? Are you sure?" Lila, "Yes, I'm sure. It's small, but it's there. Someone's been watching me." Clara, "Oh my God. Have you called the police?" Lila, "Not yet. I don't even know where to start. What if it's someone I know?" Clara urges her to report it, but Lila hesitates, overwhelmed by the thought of strangers, authorities, coming into her home. She ends the call, promising to figure it out. Her paranoia begins to grow as she looks around her once cozy home, now feeling foreign and threatening. Determined to find more evidence, Lila begins combing through the house. She starts in her bedroom, checking every corner, vent, and object that could hide another camera. She finds nothing at first, but then notices something strange about the smoke detector above her bed. Standing on a chair, she unscrews the cover and discovers another tiny camera nestled inside. Lila, whispering, "This can't be happening." Her heart pounds as she moves to the bathroom. She checks the mirror, the cabinet, even the shower head. There's no camera here, but the thought of someone watching her in such a private space makes her stomach churn. By the time she finishes searching the house, she's found 2 more cameras, one behind a picture frame in the hallway and another in a potted plant by the front door. The next day, Lila sits at her kitchen table, surrounded by the cameras she's collected. Her mind races with questions. Who did this? How long have they been watching? She thinks about the people who have access to her house. Her landlord, Mr. Graham, a gruff older man who's always been friendly but somewhat nosy. The handyman, Jake, who recently fixed a leaky faucet and lingered a little too long while chatting. And even her neighbor, Mrs. Harper, who often borrows things and once mentioned how she admired Lila's sense of style after peeking through her living room window. Lila decides to confront her landlord first. She calls Mr. Graham and asks if she can stop by his office. He agrees, and she walks over, clutching one of the cameras in her pocket. Mr. Graham, Lila, what can I do for you? Lila, hesitant, I found something in my house. A camera. Actually, multiple cameras. Do you know anything about this? Mr. Graham's face shifts from confusion to shock. Mr. Graham, cameras? In your house? Absolutely not. I would never invade your privacy like that. You've got to call the cops. Lila, you're sure you don't know anything? No one's been in the house without my knowledge. Mr. Graham, adamantly, no, of course not. You have my word. Though his reaction seems genuine, Lila can't shake her distrust. She leaves his office, feeling no closer to answers. That evening, Clara visits Lila. The two sit in the living room, the camera spread out on the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. Clara, this is insane. Do you have any idea who could have done this? Lila, no. It could be anyone. Mr. Graham swears he doesn't know anything, but I don't know if I believe him. And then there's Jake and even Mrs. Harper. Everyone's a suspect at this point. Clara studies the cameras closely. Clara, you need to be careful, Lila. Whoever did this, they're watching you for a reason. It's not random. Lila, I know. But what reason could they have? I'm nobody important. I work. I watch TV. Her voice falters as she realizes the horrifying implications. Someone has been watching her in her most vulnerable moments. Unable to sleep, Lila decides to investigate further. She connects one of the cameras to her laptop, hoping to access its storage. After hours of tinkering, she finally manages to open a folder of video files. The footage sends chills down her spine. There she is, sitting at her desk, cooking in the kitchen, sleeping in her bed. The recordings go back weeks, possibly months. But one video stands out, a figure dressed in black, adjusting the camera in her living room. Their face is obscured, but their deliberate movements are chilling. Lila, to herself, they were in my house while I was here. The realization makes her blood run cold. The figure disappears from the frame, but a faint reflection in the window catches Lila's eye. She rewinds and pauses. Though distorted, the figure's silhouette seems eerily familiar. The next day, Lila decides to talk to Mrs. Harper. As much as the elderly woman seems harmless, her nosy nature has always been unsettling. Lila knocks on her door, camera in hand. Mrs. Harper, Lila, dear, what brings you over? Lila, calm but firm, I found cameras in my house. Someone's been watching me. Do you know anything about this? Mrs. Harper's cheerful demeanor falters. She hesitates before speaking. Mrs. Harper, oh, my cameras? No, I don't know anything about that. But her voice drops to a whisper. Mrs. Harper, I've seen someone lurking around your house at night. A man. I thought he was just delivering something. But maybe he's the one you're looking for. Lila. Wide-eyed. Why didn't you tell me? Mrs. Harper, I didn't think it was my place. But now, I think you should call the police. Mrs. Harper's revelation adds another layer of fear. Who was the man she saw? Could it have been the figure from the footage? Lila's paranoia reaches a breaking point. Lila lies awake in her bed, the faint glow of her laptop illuminating the room. She replays the footage repeatedly, searching for any clue about the intruder's identity. Her fear has morphed into a simmering determination. She needs answers. Finally, she notices something. In the reflection on the window, there's a glimmer on the figure's wrist, a watch. It's distinctive with a thick black band and a metallic face. Lila's mind races as she tries to recall who might own such a watch. Lila, to herself, I've seen that watch before, but where? The next morning, Lila steps out of her house for the first time in days, clutching her phone with the incriminating footage. She walks to the local coffee shop where Jake, the handyman, often hangs out. Her heart pounds as she spots him sitting at a corner table, sipping coffee. She notices the watch on his wrist, the same watch from the footage. Her pulse quickens as she approaches him, her voice trembling but firm. Lila. Jake. Jake looking up. Hey, Lila. What's up? Lila. Glaring, I need to ask you something. Have you been in my house recently? After fixing the faucet, Jake frowns, feigning confusion. Jake, no. Why would I? Lila, showing him the footage. Then explain this. Jake's face pales as he watches the video. He stammers, his confident demeanor crumbling. Jake. Lila, I can explain. Lila, voice rising, explain what? That you've been sneaking into my house and watching me? That you've been violating my privacy for God knows how long? People in the coffee shop begin to stare. Jake glances around nervously before grabbing Lila's arm and pulling her outside. Jake, whispering, keep your voice down. Look, I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was just curious at first. Then it got out of hand. I swear I didn't hurt you or anything. Lila, furious, curious? You've been stalking me, installing cameras in my home. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? Jake's expression hardens, his tone shifting. Jake, you think I'm the only one? You're being naive, Lila. There's more going on here than you realize. Lila steps back, her anger giving way to confusion. Lila, what are you talking about? Jake, I wasn't working alone. Someone hired me to do it. They wanted to watch you. I don't know why, and honestly, I didn't ask. I just needed the money. Lila, who? Who hired you? Jake. Hesitant, I don't know their name. It was all anonymous. Emails, payments through crypto. But they were specific about you. Your schedule, your habits. They knew everything. Lila's stomach churns. Someone had been orchestrating this from the shadows, and Jake was just a pawn. Lila, you're coming with me. We're going to the police. Jake, no way. If I go down, you're on your own. Whoever they are, they're dangerous. You don't want to mess with them. Jake shoves past her and disappears into the crowd, leaving Lila reeling. She's furious, terrified, and more determined than ever to uncover the truth. Lila returns home, her mind racing. She scours her emails and bank statements, searching for any sign of unusual activity. Then she finds it, a subscription to a security service she never signed up for. The name listed on the account makes her blood run cold. Graham Property Solutions. Her landlord, Mr. Graham. Her hands tremble as she grabs her phone and calls him. Mr. Graham, on the phone. Lila, what's going on? Lila, don't play dumb with me. I know you're behind this. Why did you do it? Why did you have me watched? Mr. Graham, calmly. Lila, I think you're mistaken. Let's talk about this in person. Come by my office. Something in his tone sends a chill down her spine. But she agrees, determined to confront him face to face. Lila arrives at Mr. Graham's office, the hidden cameras stuffed in her bag as evidence. The room feels colder than usual, the blinds drawn tightly shut. Mr. Graham sits behind his desk, his expression unreadable. Mr. Graham, so you figured it out. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this. Lila. Why, Mr. Graham? Why did you do it? He leans back in his chair, his demeanor eerily calm. Mr. Graham, it wasn't personal, Lila. You were just an experiment. A test subject, if you will. I've been working with a group interested in surveillance technology, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Your house was the perfect testing ground. Lila. Testing ground? I'm not some lab rat. You invaded my life, my privacy. You've ruined everything. Mr. Graham, coldly, you don't understand the bigger picture. This is the future, Lila. Everyone will be watched eventually. It's inevitable. You were just ahead of the curve. Lila's anger boils over. She slams the cameras onto his desk. Lila, you're sick. I'm taking this to the police. You won't get away with it. Mr. Graham's expression darkens. Mr. Graham, I wouldn't do that if I were you. You have no idea who you're dealing with. This goes far beyond me. Far beyond anything you can imagine. Lila glares at him, her fear overshadowed by her determination. Lila, we'll see about that. She storms out of the office, clutching the cameras tightly. For the first time in days, she feels a flicker of hope. She's ready to fight back. Lila sits on her couch, staring blankly at the cameras spread out before her. The confrontation with Mr. Graham replays in her mind like a haunting loop. She feels a mix of triumph for standing up to him and dread over his cryptic warning. Her phone buzzes. It's a text from her best friend, Maya. Maya, text, hey, are you okay? Haven't heard from you in days. Lila, text, no. Can you come over? I really need to talk. A knock at the door a half hour later breaks the silence. Maya steps in, her face filled with concern. Maya, Lila, what's going on? You look like you haven't slept in days. Lila, voice cracking, I found hidden cameras in my house. And it wasn't random. Mr. Graham, my landlord, he's behind it. He's been watching me, Maya. Studying me like I'm some kind of experiment. Maya's eyes widen in disbelief. Maya, what? That's insane. Are you sure? Lila, I have proof. I confronted him. He admitted it, but he made it sound like he's just part of something bigger. Like there's more to this than I even know. Maya sits beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Maya, Lila, this is serious. You need to go to the police. Now. Lila, hesitant, I want to, but he said I don't know who I'm dealing with. What if he's right? What if it's dangerous? The next morning, Maya accompanies Lila to the police station. Lila places the cameras and the footage on the officer's desk, explaining everything. Detective Harper, a seasoned investigator, listens intently. Detective Harper, you did the right thing coming to us. We'll investigate Mr. Graham and his associates. This kind of behavior is not only illegal, but reprehensible. Lila, but he said it's bigger than him. He seemed so sure of himself. Like even if you catch him, it won't matter. The detective leans forward, his expression serious. Detective Harper, people like him rely on fear to keep their victims silent. Don't let that stop you. We'll make sure you're protected. Despite Harper's reassurance, Lila feels a lingering unease. The wheels are in motion, but she knows the fight isn't over. Over the next few days, Lila becomes increasingly paranoid. Every sound in her house makes her jump. Every stranger on the street feels like a threat. She starts to notice small things out of place in her home. A drawer slightly ajar, a faint footprint on her freshly mopped floor. One night, as she double-checks her locks, she spots a black SUV parked down the street. It's been there for hours. She peers through the curtains, her breath hitching when she sees a man inside holding a phone and staring at her house. Lila, to herself, they're still watching me. She snaps a photo of the car, and sends it to Detective Harper. Within minutes, her phone rings. Detective Harper on the phone. Stay inside, lock your doors, and don't open them for anyone but the police. We're sending a unit to your location. Maya stays with Lila that night, refusing to let her face this alone. They sit on the couch, the tension palpable. Maya, I can't believe this is happening to you. How are you even holding it together? Lila, I'm not. I feel like I'm losing my mind. My home was supposed to be my safe space. And now I don't even feel safe in my own skin. Maya pulls her into a hug, her voice firm. Maya, you're not alone in this. We're going to get through it. They can't control you forever. Lila nods, her tears soaking into Maya's shoulder. For the first time in days, she feels a small sense of relief. Someone is standing by her side. The police investigation gains traction. News spreads about Mr. Graham's involvement in an illegal surveillance operation. Multiple tenants come forward with similar stories, their courage bolstered by Lila's decision to speak up. Lila watches the news report from her couch, her face a mix of relief and exhaustion. The reporter's voice echoes in the background. Reporter, the landlord identified as Thomas Graham, is facing multiple charges, including invasion of privacy and illegal surveillance. Authorities believe this could be part of a larger network. Lila turns off the TV, her mind buzzing with mixed emotions. Justice feels close, but the shadows of the unknown still loom large. That night, Lila stands in her living room, looking around at the walls that once felt like a prison. She takes a deep breath, her shoulders squared. Lila. To herself, they tried to break me, but I'm still here. She sits at her desk and opens her laptop. Instead of hiding, she starts writing, sharing her story with the world. With every word, she reclaims a piece of her power, determined to ensure no one else suffers in silence. Lila sits in her dimly lit living room, her laptop and a stack of printed photos scattered on the coffee table. The footage from the hidden cameras plays on a loop in her mind, haunting her every thought. It's as if the walls of her home, the place she once called her sanctuary, are closing in on her. The memory of Mr. Graham's smirk, his chilling words, and the revelation of the network gnaw at her. She rubs her temples, feeling the tension radiating from her chest. Lila. To herself, how could I have been so blind? How long has this been happening? A knock at the door startles her. It's Maya, holding a grocery bag and wearing an expression of worry. Maya. Hey, I brought food. You haven't been eating, have you? Lila tries to muster a smile, but fails. Lila. Thanks, Maya. I don't even know where to start. Maya. Start with sitting down. You don't have to go through this alone. They sit together, Maya's comforting presence allowing Lila to let down her guard. Tears finally spill over as Lila recounts the confrontation and the overwhelming weight of what she uncovered. The next day, Lila's house feels like a crime scene. Police officers come and go, combing through every corner for additional evidence. The discovery of more cameras, smaller, hidden in vents and behind electrical outlets, sends a fresh wave of nausea through Lila. Detective Harper approaches her with a solemn expression. Detective Harper, Miss Carter, it's clear this was a sophisticated operation. We've traced several of these cameras back to an external server. It seems your landlord was sharing footage online. Lila's knees buckle, and Maya catches her before she falls. Lila, whispering, he was sharing my life with strangers. Detective Harper, I know this is overwhelming, but your bravery in coming forward has given us the leverage to dismantle this network. We'll need your continued cooperation, though. There's a good chance others will come forward because of you. The words, because of you, feel both empowering and suffocating. Lila nods, though her mind screams in protest. She never asked for this kind of responsibility. Over the next few days, Lila's relationships shift under the weight of her ordeal. Some friends reach out with concern and support, while others distance themselves, unsure how to navigate her trauma. Even Maya, her closest ally, struggles to balance being supportive and not overstepping. Lila notices her landlord's name trending online. Comments flood her social media. Some supportive, others cruelly skeptical or invasive. Random commenter. Are we sure she's not making this up for attention? Another commenter. She's so brave to speak out. But what now? Will she leave her house? The digital noise becomes another burden. She deletes her social media apps and retreats further into isolation. One evening, Lila receives a knock on her door. It's a young woman she doesn't recognize, holding a folder of documents. She introduces herself as Emily, another tenant from the building. Emily. Hi, Lila. I'm sorry to bother you, but I heard about what you're going through. I think I might have been a victim too. Emily's voice wavers as she speaks, her eyes darting nervously around the hallway. Emily, I've been finding strange things in my apartment, and when I saw the news, I knew I had to come to you. You're the only one who might understand. Lila invites her in, and the two women share their experiences. For the first time since the ordeal began, Lila feels less alone. They talk late into the night, their shared fear and anger forging a bond. Days turn into weeks. The media storm dies down, but the investigation into Mr. Graham and the surveillance network grows. Lila begins attending therapy sessions, slowly unraveling the trauma she's endured. Her therapist encourages her to find small ways to reclaim her space and her sense of control. One afternoon, Lila stands in her living room, armed with a toolbox and a fresh coat of paint. She methodically removes every vent cover, every outlet, and every fixture that once hid a camera. The process is grueling but cathartic. Lila, to herself, this is my home, my life. They don't get to take that from me. With each brushstroke of paint, the house begins to feel less like a crime scene and more like a blank slate, a place where she can start anew. Inspired by her conversations with Emily and others who've reached out, Lila begins writing a blog about her experience. At first, the words come slowly, each one a painful reminder. But as she writes, she feels a sense of release. Her story is no longer just hers. It's a beacon for others who might be suffering in silence. Blog excerpt. I was violated in the one place I thought was safe. But I'm still here. And if you're reading this, you can find your strength too. Speaking out is terrifying, but it's the only way to shine a light on the shadows. The comments on her blog are overwhelmingly positive. Survivors share their stories, thanking her for giving them courage. For the first time in months, Lila feels a spark of hope. It's been 6 months since the cameras were discovered. Lila's house is no longer a reminder of her trauma, but a reflection of her resilience. The walls are painted in soft, calming colors, and the furniture is rearranged to make the space feel fresh. The scars of the past linger, but they no longer define her. Lila stands in her kitchen, sipping coffee as sunlight streams through the windows. She hears the faint sound of her blog notifications pinging in the background. Her writing has grown into a small community, connecting survivors and advocates worldwide. Lila, healing isn't a straight line. Some days I wake up and forget for a moment. Other days, it's all I can think about. But I've learned that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to live anyway. Lila receives an email from Detective Harper, informing her that the case against Mr. Graham and the surveillance network has reached a pivotal point. Several victims have come forward, and the evidence is overwhelming. Graham has agreed to a plea deal, which includes a lengthy prison sentence. Lila feels a mix of emotions, relief that justice is being served, but frustration that the ordeal can't simply be erased. Maya visits that evening, bringing wine and takeout. Maya, so what are you going to do? Are you going to testify at the hearing? Lila, hesitant, I've thought about it. Part of me wants to just let it go, but another part of me, I want to look him in the eye. I want him to know he didn't break me. Maya, smiling, that's the Lila I know. Whatever you decide, I'll be there. The courtroom is sterile and quiet, the air thick with tension. Lila sits in the witness stand, her hands trembling slightly as she recounts her experience. Mr. Graham, shackled and gaunt, avoids her gaze, but Lila's voice grows steadier with each word, her courage palpable. Lila, you took something from me. My sense of safety, my trust in people. But I'm here, and I'm still standing. You didn't win. The room is silent. Lila catches sight of Emily and several other victims in the gallery. Their expressions a mixture of gratitude and determination. For the first time, Lila feels a sense of closure, not because Graham is being punished, but because she has reclaimed her voice. Months later, Lila's blog evolves into a larger platform. She collaborates with advocates and legal experts to create resources for others who have faced similar violations. She appears on podcasts, sharing her story to raise awareness about the growing dangers of surveillance technology and privacy breaches. One evening, she receives a message from a young woman who stumbled across her blog. A message. Thank you for sharing your story. I found a hidden camera in my apartment last week. Because of you, I knew what to do. You saved me. Lila sits back, her heart swelling with a bittersweet sense of purpose. She didn't ask to become a voice for others, but now that she is, she embraces it. On a quiet Sunday morning, Lila takes a walk through her neighborhood. The crisp air carries the promise of a fresh start. She passes the now vacant house where Mr. Graham once lived. For a moment, she stops, staring at the broken windows and overgrown yard. Lila, to herself, you're gone. And I'm still here. She turns away, walking toward a park where children laugh and play. The sound feels like a promise. Life goes on. Lila smiles faintly, her steps lighter than they've been in a long time. The final scene shows Lila at her desk, finishing an entry for her blog. The camera pans across the room, revealing a framed photo of her and Maya, a stack of letters from supporters, and a small award recognizing her advocacy work. Lila, I can't change what happened to me, but I can change what happens next. If my story helps even one person feel less alone, then it was worth telling. Because in the end, the shadows don't win. We do. Lila closes her laptop, leans back, and exhales deeply. The screen fades to black, leaving the sound of her steady breathing and the faint hum of life continuing around her.